Women's Power to Heal Mother Earth. This is Maya Tewari. Fear, its blessings and adversities. To continue with the exposition of fear, we will deal with the gravitational pull that fear has to take us into deep, dark spaces below the normal vibration that we would carry. And this is one of the reasons why fear is so detrimental and can be so exhaustive to bear. Fear is natural human response and emotion. Each and every one of us experiences fear in our lifetime. What matters the most is how we respond to fear, how we understand fear, and what we can do to mitigate its impact on our actions, hopes, and dreams, and forward progress. The danger, indeed, is to allow fear to usurp joy, happiness, wholesome quality of life, and our creative spirit. These are gems that we have earned through the karmas of our lives and must protect through shifting our thoughts and our prana or breath to the positive, regardless of how deep the fear is and how much deeper the obstacles in your way or the impact from actions that are creating fear for us. To understand the anatomy of fear, which part of its bearing journey we are responsible for, and the circumstantial elements which we can shift, of course, we also need to know those which are beyond our control. Most of what happens when we respond in fear is beyond our control. Accepting that, we can move on to the areas of our life, our buddhi, our greater mind, and our spirit that we can take, for lack of a better word, that we can take charge of. When the fear energies in our vibrational field become persistent and continues for endless number of days, weeks, months, or years, we tend to lose our sense of self. We become distracted by the tenacity that fear can extend and expound into our lives. How do we release our brain from the vortex force of the gravitational pull of fear? And until we are able to release ourselves from that downward spiraling pull to nowhere that leaves us exhausted, tired, fatigued, and angry, the more we learn how to pull ourselves out from that spin, the more we'll be able to manage our fears in our lives without having it usurp our greater moments of joy, happiness, and the nature of who we are. As I said earlier, fear is a natural emotion, and it is something that everyone experiences in their lifetime. Fear can be healthy. It is programmed into our nervous body, our system, our nerves, our network of nerves and meridians, and gives us the survival instinct we need to keep ourselves safe from danger. We all know that. Fear becomes unhealthy when it makes us more cautious to live our lives, when we need to constantly search for and never find that safe space, and when it prevents us from doing the things we would otherwise love to do and are otherwise pulled to do in the creation of our journey and our purpose. So how we respond to fear is the key in our discussion today. Fear can come, and usually does come, from some form of violence. In our society, violence pervades. It victimizes so many millions of lives, and it is a serious risk factor for health for both men, women, and of course your children. Many of the unfortunate circumstances that create fear can deepen our sense of loss. It is a proven fact that the long-term exposure to violence, hate crimes, physical abuse, oral or attitudinal negativity has an adverse effect on our health, our wellness, and sense of joy. This environment makes us susceptible to being fearful and vulnerable to being preyed on. The fear factor sensitivity is greatly heightened in our world today, and especially in those of us who have been exposed to long-term abuse, violence, whether it be in our childhood years or in the adulthood of our time. Long-term exposure to the ugly and untoward circumstances in our lives makes fear a routine response, and this is one of the crucial factors that radically change our behavior and outlook on life. We can experience many physical and emotional symptoms as a result of long-term exposure to fear. The heart disease, high blood pressure, digestive issues, anxiety attacks, nervous breakdown, a numbing sensation in the brain, not least of all, the major loss of memory and our self-worth, the corruption of our joy and inspiration as our body goes into fight or flight or shock and awe responses. Fear robs our life force, diminishing the quality of life. Biologically, fear is programmed into our nervous system, and we could say it is even as subtly involved in the non-physical factors, the energetic factors and vibrational field of our chakras. And it works instinctively from the time we are born. It gives us the survival instinct to keep ourselves safe when we feel like we are in danger. So fears, as I said, are healthy if it's just on the peripheral level or superficial level of something like running into a big bear in the backyard, or running because the house has caught on fire, or some such thing. But other fears that work into the deeper tissue layers of our being, into our memory field, into our brain, that becomes imprinted there, stamped there because of its long-term exposure, well, those fears make us cautious and really mitigate the beauty of our lives. One of the ways that I have been working with fear in my own life is to spend as much time as possible exposed to the sort of vibrational impact from Mother Nature, the wind, her natural storms, the brushing of the leaves against each other. And oftentimes, because I'm too weary to get out or to go to nature, from the long-term exposure I have had to certain violence and other remarkably negative things in my life. I listen to music, the music that I love, music with very high vibration. And there's so many now in the market that we can look, because what it does is subtly recharge the brain in an amazing way. It's a telepathic and it's also telecommunicative way for us to understand that we are formed from the cosmic sound. We are formed from the amazing vibration that gave birth to this creative earth. And therefore we can go back to those vibrations to reset our organism so that fears are allayed and that we can pull ourselves out of that gravitational hold that takes us into the deep, dark detritus of it all. And so something as simple as being in nature, not nature that has become so polluted and so put upon, but nature that is fairly free from the chemical haze and the noise factors of humanity. If we can get back into these amazing environments, or if we're too tired to do so, then we can turn on the sort of vibrational upliftment through music and be able to find ourselves. I have been fortunate that I was trained at one time as a Vedic monk who learned the Sanskrit chants, endless numbers of Sanskrit chants. Sanskrit being a universal composition of sound. The very first inaudible sounds were translated, what we call shabda, into Sanskrit. It only later became an alphabet. It only later developed through the yantras of its alphabet, because each one of its vowels, for instance, represent the goddess or the maternal goddess, divine force in our universe. But we'll get to that later. I have been fortunate to chant and be able to chant Sanskrit fluently, and that is probably one of the reasons why vibrationally, even though I've been exposed to a decade and more of intense violence, yet, and there is fear, I'm not denying that. In fact, I'm openly saying that there has been fear, there has been inured fear. You have certain repetitious things that have happened, let's say thousands of times, create an expectation. It's natural within the brain. And so basically it has its gravitational pull. It inundates each other. And so each incident, after thousands and thousands of incidents, become something that reformat the brain, in fact. And so basically to stay in a state of balance has been very difficult. But I have been fortunate, as I said. And so too, we all need to count our blessings, because we all have them, even in dire and difficult and challenging and incredibly sad times. And so for me, I believe that one of my factors for resilience through the conditions that have been shaping my life of recent has been the fact that the tissue and memory were so bathed and swathed in the sound of Sanskrit and the chants, which I have done for many, many years and now continue back to them, although more internally than externally or audibly. Whichever way we find, we need to know that the fastest medicine is nature, as always, and in this case, in the case of fear, and inured fear, meaning that was driven into you for a long, long time. And we may not be the victims of long-term violence or abuse. Fear can be implanted in a genetic way through the tissue memory, the cellular memory of our being and who we are. We can become sensitized from, even though we've had a beautiful life from childhood onward. So whatever the reason is that we are facing fear, the worst of it, of course, is inundation of violence that creates fear and the repetition of that violence that goes on ceaselessly and relentlessly. And so for those of us, too, who can share my thoughts and my reality with the latter types of fear, let us say that for all of us, using the cosmic sound and the vibration of nature and the purity of exquisite music that is based on the higher vibratory field. Of course, moving the limbs are very important as well, and we'll get to that later. It came to the point where it became very difficult for me to have my natural agility and mobility, but I'm getting that back as well. And part of that is to heighten the vibrational field first and foremost, so that we are not constantly in that inured vibrational field, that very fearsome place when we are already filled with fears. And so I wanted to share this as a source, a very simple source, a simple medicine from nature. One of our inner medicine resources is sound, is exquisite, high vibrational sound. Nature already has given us this in her winds and in her form and in her silence and in the incredible cosmic communion between trees and the phenomenal network of the roots of the trees and their nourishment and nurturance and signals to each other. And so all of that, although we may not be visibly aware and audibly aware of any of it, when we sit in the nature of what is nature, we are influenced by that vibration that is incredibly celestial and something that helps us to heal. So no more can any one of us say that we do not have access to the medicines that we need for fear. We do have access. And as I said, if the mobility and inertia is so deep that we cannot get out to nature, if we live in big cities where nature is a little distance from us, then let us turn to the inner sound. Learn the chants. They are divine, they are universal. They're not bound by the religion of Hinduism, although they did come from my tradition. But you may use them, and you may chant them, and you may learn even the simplest of mantras for yourself, for your own lifting of the vibration within you. Thank you for listening, and peace be your journey.